David Hertel in for Elias. I was profoundly shocked seeing the past day's events regarding anti-Semitic acts. We now have, 3 different campaign posters of liberal candidates being vandalized with anti-Semitic symbols. We have the anti-vax movement using Stars of David. Vandalism at synagogues is on the rise. I think we need to take this very seriously, and I think we need to act and do much more than we're doing now. To discuss, I'm glad to have ETA, who is the vice president of the Advisory Center for Jewish-Israeli Relations. ETA, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
ETA, what do we need to do? Because this is definitely not going in the right direction. These incidents happen and, everybody's denouncing them. You have all the political leaders that have denounced it, and everything that needs to be said is being said, yet incidents on the rise, right?
Yeah, look, part of what needs to happen is happening. As you said, political leaders are denouncing. I think most Quebecers are shocked and do not share these sentiments at all, and are together in the fight against Jew hatred and all forms of racism. But it's troubling. We've had a troubling and worrisome rise in anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish incidents this year. And, it's the challenge for everyone is to play their part and do what we can to push hard against hatred.
Okay, first, do you have any idea of the causes? Not the causes. We know the basic causes, but the causes for this increase. Why do you think we have more incidents?
Look, in 2021, from the period from January to May, we already have more incidents than we had in 2020 altogether. Anti-Semitism is unique in the sense that it mutates, it adapts, and it finds a home in any movement. And what we need to do is, whatever movement you're in, whatever school of thought, wherever you see it, you need to stand against it and push back. We've seen this year, we've all kind of lived in the social media world. We've seen a rise in online hate, and one of the things that we're doing is calling on the federal government to increase its efforts and to advance legislation further than has already been announced to stem the tide against online hate and to ensure that it doesn't continue to be the forum where hate is allowed to ferment and any marginal voice gets a podium. That's something that we all have to push against. We also had the summit, the federal summit that we called for on anti-Semitism just a couple of weeks ago. And that was the beginning of a conversation with federal, provincial, municipal governments who all need to play their part in the fight against anti-Semitism and all forms of racism. We've seen a troubling rise in hate incidents and a number of communities affected.
Speaking with ETA, Vice President of the Advisory Center for Jewish-Israeli Relations, I'm wondering, beyond summits, beyond conversation, are we at the point where we have to have stronger legislation on hate speech and real consequences to hate speech?
Look, freedom of opinion and expression of ideas is something we all cherish.
But they're not absolutes. They're not absolute.
They're not absolute. And, part of that is understanding the difference between defending someone's right to say what you don't want to hear and preventing someone from saying something that crosses the line. When we're talking about incitement to hatred, incitement to violence, that is where we need to draw the line. And that is why we have focused our call on the social media universe. Social media platforms need to be held accountable and need to do more to ensure that the kind of vitriol and hateful messaging that we see online isn't isn't a free-for-all. There's a responsibility there. Anyone, social media is the great equalizer. You don't have to have a large following to express your view or to be heard. And on the one hand, that's great. On the other hand, we're giving echo to marginal and hateful voices, and that's something that we have to push hard against. And the governments, social media platforms all have a role to play in that.
And individually, what can we do? What can all of us do that we should, what should we be maybe doing more of when we hear these acts, when we see these comments on social media, when we have like anti-vaxxers not only using the Star of David as a way to protest, but also defending it? Just saying, "Oh no, this is not a mistake. We feel it's the same thing." What do we do individually? Because sometimes people feel powerless in front of these acts. What do you suggest we do?
I mean, what you're doing now, actually, you have the power of the media behind you, but every individual has the power to stop and do exactly what you're doing and say, you know what? This is unacceptable. And that's what you're hearing. You're talking about the yellow stars, and it's not just the Jews who need to be shocked and upset. It's everyone. The yellow star was a symbol in the greatest genocidal project in our recent history, and to say that compares to supporting a particular perspective, that's everyone needs to stand up and say, you know what, that's too far, that's unacceptable. When we trivialize symbols like that, we trivialize our history, the lessons learned, and the commitments that we have to never again. We have to push back. Jew hatred, and all forms of racism. I mean, we've seen anti-Asian hatred, we've seen anti-Black racism, anti-Muslim hatred. All of these things are unacceptable, and everyone, is around some kind of table or in some kind of setting where they can push back. And when you see something, when you don't need an organization behind you. When you see something, call it out. You need to say, stand up and say, what you just said, what I am seeing is unacceptable. And when hatred is pushed back against, we begin to win the fight.
On that note, let's continue the fight. Eta Yudin, Vice President of the Advisory Center for Jewish-Israeli Relations, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, David.
Take care.